Hey Bookaholics, and welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you a dedicated series review of the Dreamblood duology by N.K. Jemisin. The Dreamblood duology is an epic fantasy duology that consists of The Killing Moon and The Shadowed Sun. This is now the third series that I have read by this author, and I am genuinely contemplating whether this is my favourite series or if it is still the fifth season. I still haven't figured out if it's recency bias that makes me love this one more, or if it genuinely is my favourite Jemisin series. In this series, we are following multiple characters in this city in which we have the Gatherers. Now, the only law in this city is peace, and it is kept by the Gatherers. The Gatherers are priests of the dream goddess, and they harvest people's dreams. They will heal and soothe those who are deemed worthy, and they will kill those deemed corrupt. It is the way of law in this city. We are following one such gatherer when a hero is called into question because he encounters someone who, instead of having been sent off to the dream realm, had in fact been sent off to the nightmare realm. He has to clear his name and uncover what is actually going on in this city, because this is the biggest blasphemy, the worst stain of corruption that you can find in this world is to send someone off into the nightmare realm. Their horrified faces reflecting where they are to spend eternity. This series, we are mostly following a hero, but we are following multiple characters, and it does expand in the second book, and we are intrinsically linked to both the investigation that a hero is going through as well as the politics of the city as it stands. There are other characters' perspectives that we get from that are people not from this city originally, who actually deem the way the Gatherers harvest dreams and the entire society of Gatherers to be abhorrent. They see the corruption within the Gatherer community. We are getting it from a different lens, as well as someone who is devoutly within the Gatherers. So I thought that was a really good juxtaposition on Jemisin's part, to be creating characters that will be on opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to the belief system and the belief in the society. Thematically, we have discussions around morality. It also has a discussion around euthanasia, which, given that Jemisin was a carer, I don't know if that is something that she has sort of seen firsthand. Not that she's seen euthanasia, because as far as I'm aware, it's not legal in the US, but just watching someone die painfully and suffer, and knowing that someone who could bring about a peaceful death would actually be welcome instead of deemed as someone fearful and someone horrifying. So that was a really interesting theme and discussion that we had in here, and I think it was handled beautifully, because it wasn't a universal euthanasia is always good and always helpful, and it wasn't a euthanasia is bad and it's murder. It was a discussion and understanding that there is a spectrum of its use, and I really appreciated that. Another core theme in here is, of course, morality in general when it comes to criminal justice especially. So again, discussions around what is essentially the death sentence, which I thought was also very interesting, especially when you do have the notion of, is someone truly innocent or not? The amount of cases that get overturned, and therefore it poses an issue of, you have put someone to sleep and they have done nothing wrong. So I liked that discussion. And then of course the other themes we find a lot within fantasy. We have discussions around corruption, around politics, and the use of magic. So a lot of themes that I really loved were discussed in here really well. I also found that the characters carrying out these themes were done tremendously as well, because Jemisin has a mastery of character work, and I don't want to spoil it too much, because Jemisin is the kind of author that is really easy to spoil. I feel like even discussing the themes to an extent kind of feels a bit spoilery, but we do have multiple characters, and as I said, it does expand in the next one, and we have varying levels of privilege and varying different degrees of commitment to the Gatherers, to the Dream Priestess, to the establishment. We have different people in different positions, which she used to juxtapose all of the different perspectives that you would get in a city like this. The city that is supposed to be this paragon of unity and of peace, and yet you have deep-seated corruption, as you would with any society. And I think that having this plethora of characters that are sprinkled across all of the different subsets of society were done really, really well. The plot itself does have a somewhat mystery element going through it, but if you read mysteries specifically because they tend to be more compelling, I would caution you that Jemisin is the kind of author who unveils things very, very slowly. It's not an action-packed style mystery where you are going to be finding a new clue every minute. It is more of a slow burn, and it's an undercurrent to all of the other things that are happening in this city. So as much as obviously you are intrigued by the mystery element to it, and it does make you want to keep reading, it's not one that will contribute to the pace, which I know a lot of people who read mystery fantasies, it's what they are reaching for, is that increment in pace, and that's just not the case with this one. However, for me that was absolutely fantastic because it meant that I just got to sit with it. And with Jemisin, because I'm normally the kind of person who will actively try and predict things, who will try and think through, guess, foreshadowing, with Jemisin I have learned to just let her steer me and I will just go along for the ride. It's fantastic because I am someone who normally overthink things within my books. It's really nice to just play passenger princess while I'm reading her books, I'm not gonna lie, because with the 5th season I realized that my enjoyment enhanced when I stopped and just had pure faith that she would unveil it to me, and especially given that she unveils things in a way that allows you to see the foreshadowing without you having to have carried it with you throughout the whole book, and I really appreciate that, and that is definitely something that can be said for this series as well. So between having some absolutely stellar themes, some really interesting characters to carry out those themes, and then a plot that is a self-driving car that will just take you along for the ride and you don't really need to put in much work and still have an amazing time and it still fuel your brain, it was an amazing time. One of the things that I will say for the characters is, and this is something that I think is generally what I have found with Enki Jemisin, is that her characters aren't overly personable. They're not someone that you like want to be buddies with or want to hang out with. Her characters are very much removed from you when it comes to not even emotional investment, because I'm really emotionally invested in their stories, but they're not people that you find relatable. They are people that you find interesting for the most part. Now they obviously all have traits depending on who you are as a person. So for example, Essen from the 5th season is one of my favorite characters, but she's a mother, so her maternal drive is one of the things that I found a connection with her. But her characters, unless you have a common thread with them, it's more out of interest that they are compelling than it is out of relatability. So do bear that in mind. However, I think that Jemisin's writing is the best in the genre, in my opinion. I don't think that there is someone doing what Jemisin does as well as Jemisin does out there at the minute. For the most part, obviously would highly recommend. These two are my favourite books of the year so far. Granted, we're only in April, but they are my favourite books of the year so far, and I have been having a really good reading year so far. Do with that information what you will. As I said, it possibly will be out the 5th season for me. I'm not sure I would recommend this series to be your first foray into Jemisin. It depends really on what you are looking for. The Inheritance series is a very easy one to get into because they are somewhat standalones. So for people who don't binge read, Inheritance I think works really well because all it is crossover characters. Obviously if you read the second book you will spoil stuff from the first book, but it's the story themselves are quite self-contained. The 5th season is one that is rather convoluted but seems to be most people's favorite, and as long as I said, you're okay playing passenger alongside the narrative and just letting her take you, then I think you should be fine. But you do have to get used to second person narrative, which is not something that bothers me in the slightest, but it seems to bother some people, so do bear that in mind. While with this one we have the mystery element, this is a much more plot driven one than her other works, but it is very slow moving. So all of her works do require a bit of effort on your part in some way, shape or form, so do bear that in mind. But I don't know who I would recommend for this to be their first foray into Jemisin, unless you are a really plot centric reader, in which case this would probably do you wonders. But that is all from me for this review. So let me know if you've read any Jemisin and what your favourite series is. Let me know if you would plan on picking up this series, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye!